And here Magnus the kill shot, rook takes c3. In this video, Magnus Carlsen destroys Anish Giri in 22 moves at the 2024 Global Chess League. Okay, in the game, Anish Giri is white. He opens 1d4, Magnus goes knight to f6, then c4, e6, knight f3, and d5, the queen's gambit decline on the board. Now, of course, the main options for a white are knight to c3 and g3, the Catalan. And here, Anish Giri goes for the Catalan opening with the move g3. And let's see what Magnus Carlsen does in response. In the game, he goes bishop e7. This is the old classical main line of the Catalan from Black's perspective. His idea is simple. He wants to castle, then perhaps take on c4 and try to slowly equalize the game. Now here, Anish Giri, he follows the main line as well. Bishop g2, castles, castles. And here, Magnus Carlsen, the main line for him is going to be d takes c4, try to take on c4, and then slowly equalize. But instead, he goes for a completely different idea, c6, heading for the closed Catalan, but without the move bishop b4 inserted first. Now, this is a little bit rare. Magnus Carlsen typically goes for this line without the move d takes c4 in the classical Catalan when he wants to outplay his opponent in a weird position. So let's see what happens here. Anish Giri goes queen c2, the best move depending upon all the c4 square, and stopping d takes c4, then b5 ideas by Magnus Carlsen. Now Magnus b6, intending either bishop b7 or bishop a6. We'll have to see which square he wants to place this light squared bishop on. Now Anish Giri, bishop f4, very standard developing move. And now we do transpose back to a typical closed Catalan where black goes bishop b4 check, forcing out bishop d2, then going back to the e7 square. It's a little complicated, but we do transpose here back to a very main line of the Catalan opening. Now Magnus, bishop a6, putting pressure on that pawn on the c4 square. Of course, now the threat is either bishop takes the pawn or d takes c4, at which point Magnus will be up a pawn, so here Anish Giri has to respond. And he has a few different ideas. For example, b3 is playable, knight d2 is playable, but instead here Anish Giri goes for the safest option, that is just c takes d5, trying to trade off those pawns. So here Anish Giri, he's not messing around. He's playing against literally the greatest chess player of all time, Magnus Carlsen, and he wants to play it safe. All right, black, here instead of taking on d5 with the c pawn, that would be the more symmetrical variation and the safer option for Magnus. Instead, he takes back with the knight. Knight takes d5. So Magnus trying to get some sort of imbalance going in the game. All right, here Anish Giri, he does not move the bishop. He actually goes knight to c3, allowing Magnus to take on the f4 square, and that is what happens. Knight takes f4, then g takes f4. Now, if you're a beginner, you may be wondering why Anish Giri allowed this recapture on the f4 square. He gave up a bishop pair, and he doubled his pawns on the f-file. Well, it turns out this is a very well-known structure in the queen's gambit decline and the Catalan. Here, White's basic idea is to go e3, at which point he'll have all of his pawns on the dark squares, and those pawns are actually very, very useful. Anish may even go f5 at some point, getting rid of the double pawn and using his extra f-pawn as a battering ram trying to open black's kingside. Now here, Magnus goes knight d7, continuing developing. Now rook fd1, rook c8, and rook c1. So both sides just getting all of their pieces into the game. So far, very, very standard stuff. Now Magnus, queen c7, develops the queen, perhaps setting up rook d8 ideas as well. Here, Anish Giri, e3. Again, getting that very famous pawn structure with all the pawns on the dark squares in this structure. So, Anish Giri here, he still has a very small advantage, but Magnus Carlsen is still very much in the game. Now here, Magnus, this is a very critical position in this opening. Here is a wide variety of ideas he could play. For example, bishop b7 is very playable, rook d8 is playable, rook e8 is even playable. But instead here, Magnus, he plays a very strange looking move at first glance. Queen to b8. Undeveloping the queen, but the main idea of this move is he's opening up the line of attack with the rook on the c8 square with the queen on c2. And that will be important if Magnus Carlsen goes c5, trying to trade off the c pawns and d pawns here, at which point the c file may open up and this rook may be very well placed against the white queen on c2. All right, how does Anish Giri respond? Well, it turns out the move queen b8 is a little bit slow, and he has a few different really good ideas here if he wants to play for a win. For example, knight to e5 is very strong, jumping in with the knight, and he can also go for that other idea we mentioned earlier, f5, using that extra f-pawn as a battering ram trying to open black's kingside, and here black takes on f5, white recaptures with the queen, and he's got an excellent game. Now, instead of that, here Anish Giri, he's trying to play safe and solid. He just doesn't want to lose against Magnus Carlsen. That would be super embarrassing for him. So instead, he plays the move a3. Very slow, but very solid. His idea is he wants to go b4, expanding on the queenside. But however, here, Magnus is going to be just fine. He goes bishop b7, rerouting the bishop to the better square. Of course, the bishop already did his job on a6, forcing off the trade of the c-pawn. And now it goes back to the b7 square, where it is opposing that white bishop on the g2 square. Now, Anish Giri, b4, expanding on the queenside. Magnus goes rook fd8, getting the last piece into the game, that being that other rook. And now Anish Giri, queen b3, getting the queen off this open c-file. Very good idea, as he knows c5 may be coming next from Magnus Carlsen. And that is what happens here. Here in this position, Magnus actually breaks with the move c5. Now, the computer doesn't like this that much. It seems to think Magnus can wait a little bit longer with perhaps rook c7 or queen to a8. But instead, c5 on the board by Magnus Carlsen. And this is where the fireworks in this game start. Here in Anish Giri, he takes on c5 with the b-pawn. B takes c5, then b takes c5. And now we have this very uncomfortable tension with the queens here. Something might be happening very, very soon on that front. Now here in Anish Giri, he has to find the key move to keep fighting for an advantage to stay in the game. That key move is going to be d5, expanding in the center. However, Anish Giri, he doesn't play this. Instead, he plays a very passive move, rook to b1. Already we're seeing in this game, Anish Giri, his main plan is just head for the Catalan, stay super safe, and don't lose to Magnus Carlsen. Again, that would be very embarrassing for him. But here, Magnus Carlsen, he finds a tactical shot. Bishop takes f3, giving up the bishop for the knight on the f3 square, and opening up this tension with the queens and the rooks on the b file. All right, here, Anish Giri, he has the option of just going queen takes b8. That would be a very solid move. However, he would be a little bit worse. Instead, he goes bishop takes f3, and now Magnus Carlsen, instead of trading on b3, he goes c takes d4, opening up the line of attack with the rook on the c3 square. So already we have a whole bunch of tension in this position, and here Anish Giri, he chokes under the pressure. The key move, real fast, he has to play the move queen takes b8. This is the only way to stay in the game. And I'm going to show you this one line real fast. The main line goes knight takes b8, then Anish takes on d4, and then Magnus takes on d4, ruining white's pawn structure. And of course now white has these 4 different pawn islands. His pawn structure is ruined. However, he's still very much in the game with these opposite colored bishops. Instead, going back to the game here in this position, instead of playing queen takes b8, which he should have played, here Anish Giri takes the pawn on the d4 square, rook takes d4. But this move is a massive blunder, and here Anish Giri basically loses on the spot to the key idea, rook takes c3, a brilliant move by Magnus Carlsen, the GOAT of chess. What's the idea? Well, if you take the rook on c3, then bang, queen takes b1, wins back the rook, and then Magnus Carlsen is up a full knight. He has the extra knight. Anish Giri no longer has the knight on the c3 square. What else can you do? If you defend with, say, queen d1, then again, you're just down a knight. You can't do that. Here the computer says the best idea, believe it or not, is queen b7. That just shows how bad Anish Giri's position is here. Instead, he goes queen takes b8, trying to win back material, but then Magnus, rook takes b8, and look at this. The rook is defended. If Anish Giri takes on b8, Magnus takes back with the knight, and suddenly he's just up a full knight. He has the 2 minor pieces versus the 1 of Anish Giri, and here Anish Giri resigns on the spot to Magnus Carlsen. He's down a full piece, and he has literally no chance of saving this game. Wow, what a game by Magnus Carlsen. And if you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button. And what do you think about this embarrassing loss by Anish Giri? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video.